Ready? All right. Good morning, everybody. Let me just make sure I'm not on mute. Okay. We are in Daf Daled. We left off in the middle of our good friend Baba Ben Buta somehow avoided his sword of Hordus. Hordus, as we recall, he was an Eved of the Chashmonaim. He heard a pasuk that says if a slave rebels, he will be successful. So he did that. He killed all the Chashmonaim. He was hoping to have his eyes on a certain girl. She took her own life, and therefore, basically, the lineage of the Chashmonaim ceased at that point. And he killed all the Rabbanan. And he left off Baba Ben Buta. He knocked out his eyes, but he kept him around for Eitzah. Now, top line of Daled Amar Aleph. So Yom Echad, one day, Amar. So one day, Hurdus went on. He put on a disguise, fake mustache, and for Baba Ben Buta, actually Baba Ben Buta, I guess, was blind. Right, but he pretended he was not Hordus. He pretended that he was some other person. He said, "Oh, Chazi my hi Avda Bisha my Kavid." You see what this bad slave referring to himself, right, trying to slip up what Mazuda is doing. Samarlei, may I have you? Like, what can we do to him? Samarlei, now let's go curse him, right? Samarlei, see the pasuk says Gam. I don't want to ruin this pasuk over here. So the pasuk says. Right, where's the pasuk on the side? Gam, gam madatcha melech al segala. Right, do not go ahead and curse the king. So I can't curse him. Samarlei is I love Melechu, but he's not a king, right? He's saying about himself. He's trying to trigger him. Samarlei, at least minimally Lavi Asher. He's a wealthy person. And Bialma, the Ksiv says, right? You should not, even in your houses, your privacy, you should not go ahead and curse the wealthy. Okay, maybe he's a prince. You can't go ahead and so I can't go ahead and curse a prince. But isn't that referring to when he's acting like when he's a nasi amongst your nation, but he's not acting like he's amongst our nation. I love Samarlei. So Baba Ben Buta asked, responding to this guy, Hordus, he said, I am fearful of him. So he said, no one's going to tell him. It's just me and you, Jasina. It's just me and you here, sitting here. No, he's not going to know. Samarlei, still, Baba Ben Buta would not curse him. See, the pasuk says, Kiyov Shamayim Yelech, Yelech Hasakol, Val Kanfayim Yogi Davar. He says, a bird will go ahead and tell him, I heard it from a little birdie, right? The little birdie will go ahead and tell him. So therefore, I will not go ahead and do it. So Amarlei, Anna. So he says, I. So Anna, who? So then, he heard this, revealed himself. He says, Lisa, it's me. And he havi adina, the Zahiri Rabbanan Kulihai, lo havi katlina luhu. Had I known that the Rabbanan were such stand-up people, they wouldn't have gone ahead, and act like you and curse me even when I would never find out. I never would have killed them, right? A big oops. So hashta my tekanase. So what can I do now? So my tekanase del gavra. So what, three on third person. So what can I do to save myself? Samarlei, who kiba oira sha'ilam. So since he, referring to you, Baba Ben Buta, Hordus extinguished the light of the world, referring that Torah is a light to the world. Go ahead and deal with the aura of the world. The pasuk says, it says there regarding the base of Mikdash, there was a light to all the nations. So too, you should go ahead and be involved in the rebuilding of the temple. Now, remember, as you recall, so this is during Bayis Sheni. However, there was a renovation project, right? They had an improvement campaign, a charity campaign they're intending to do, and basically he told Hordus, maybe you just go ahead and rebuild it on your own. And he could slightly diversion. He says, you blinded the eye of the world. See, the pasuk says, so it says you went ahead from the eyes of the nation of Chachamim, and therefore you should go ahead and deal with the eyes of the world. See, the pasuk says, So so it says over there that you went ahead and profaned my temple, right? Which was the eyes to the people. So referring to the mikdash was the eyes. So too you should go ahead, right, and you should replenish the eyes. Summer lay. So it says this now mistafina machusa, right? So it says. This says, look, I'm just a governor out here in this region in the Middle East, right? I'm scared of Rome, right? They're going to go ahead and I'm still mishtavi to them. So if I go ahead and maybe I'll get in trouble. Samarle. So Baba Muta says, oh, okay, here's what you do. Follow along. Shadar shalicha v'lizal shasa. So go ahead and get a shliach and send him. Take him, a year to get there. V'yakev shasa and to hang around in Rome for a year. V'lihadar shasa and then return for a year. So it'll be 3 years since you sent him off. Meanwhile, meanwhile, you go ahead, you'll tear it down, you'll build it up, and they can't say you did it without permission, right? You tried to go ahead and ask their permission, you just didn't hear back. So Avid Haki, so he took his advice and Hordus went ahead and rebuilt the base of Mikdash. So Shalchule, right? So they sent back them Imloi. So what was the answer? Imloi Altistar. If you don't go ahead and if you didn't go ahead and break it, tear it down. And don't go ahead and tear it down. If you did already tear it down, Herod, then Altivna, then don't go ahead and rebuild it. Vanisa, and if you went ahead already and tore it down and rebuilt it, so Avdi Bisha Basar the Avdi the Amis Malchin. Right, you know what bad slaves do? They listen to themselves. They don't listen to their masters. So we're this, once a slave, always a slave, and therefore, he did what he wanted. And he was Nacha Alacha Sifrecha. And if you're haughty and you think you've accomplished so much, what we've done. We got your number. In other words, we know your lineage. Was it 23andMe? Right, we got your account, and we know that you're an Eved through and through. So you have nothing. And lo iracha baracha. You are not a racha or a barach. Well, since the racha is, and hurdus avda kolina misavin. And basically, he's a slave who made himself free. So my racha isn't in racha. So malchusa. It means he is like a king. Like right now, we say you're not a king or the son of a king or a prince. The pasuk says, "Anechi ayayim rach mashiach melech." It says over there, right? That on that day, right? He was, became the king. So rach was a reference to becoming king, or by saying about Mehacha from Yosef says Veikur Avrech. They called him Avrech, which was Av and right by Yosef Av and Rach. So you see that Racha is referring to a king. So Amri Mishalei Ra Binyan Hordus La Ra Binyan Noah Miyama. Whoever never saw the building that Hordus built, never saw a beautiful building in life. So my bani. So how do you go ahead and build it? So Amarabba, so Ba'avne Shisha Marima Mar Miro, right? So he says it was marble, right, like white and green. And Ikadari, some say Ba'avne Kuchla. It was blue. Shisha marma or blue, white, and green. All right, and apik shafa v'ayil shafa. So basically, the stones were not straight; they were jagged. One came out and a little bit, and one was back in, and they that's how they went. Why do they do that? Kiheki did a kabel sida, right? In order that you put the cement, and there's normally if you put one on top of one another, so the only way to stick them together is to put the mortar in between. Therefore, from the side you see the mortar. But if you put it, if you don't put them evenly stacked, so then you can put the mortar behind it, and therefore they stick together from behind it. And therefore, when looking at it, you don't see any of the mortar; you just see the marble. So some of them Yeshav went to go ahead and cover with a golden roof. Some of the Rabbanan Shavkua, no, go ahead, leave it. The Hachi Shapir Tvei, the Michazi Ki Adusa Diyam. Right, this looks better. Looks like the sea. Right, we mentioned the marble of the white and the green and the blue. So therefore, this this color like the sea is more beautiful than that. Fine. Ubaba ben Buta heichi avi hachi. How could Baba ben Buta go ahead and give advice to Hordus to go ahead and be mechaper for killing all the Rabbanim? Why was Daniel punished? That he was punished. Because he went ahead and gave advice to Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar, right? Killed and destroyed, and he had a bad dream, And Daniel says, you want to, you know what? He says, what does this mean? He says, so what Daniel says, he says, the pasuk says, Lahed, Malka Malchi Yishbar Alecha V'Chasecha, B'Tzedakah Paruch V'Vesicha B'Michan Enayin Hein, Tiavi Archa L'Shlosecha. It says over there, right, that in order to go ahead and fix and push off your punishment for your sins, go ahead and perform a charity to those that need, and to help out those that are those are in need. Be gracious to the poor. So you see over there that Daniel gave Nebuchadnezzar advice. See, the pasuk says, "Kulamata Nebuchadnezzar Malka." Eventually, he did get punished. However, however, it would delay 12 months. So in other words, his punishment delayed 12 months because Nebuchadnezzar took the advice of Daniel to go ahead and do tzedakah to the poor. So how did Baba Ben Buta? So how was he able to go ahead and give advice to Hordus? So we see that one should not go ahead and give advice like Daniel was punished. See, by saying Mashani Avda, they chayv mitzvahs. Well, Nebuchadnezzar was a guy. Hordus was an evet. So therefore, he was shackled with mitzvahs. So therefore, since he's shackled with mitzvahs, therefore he should be able to do tshuva. Or by saying Mashani Beis Hamikdash Dilay Malchus Lay Misavni. Or you could say that really that it was it was needed at the time because there was no other way the Beis Hamikdash was going to go ahead and be rebuilt, and therefore he had to do it this way by telling Hordus. I for Daniel and Dianish, and I know Daniel was punished. So Elam, let's see the pasuk says Vatikra Esther. So it says over there in the Megillah, so that Esther she called out Lahazach, right? So she called. And who was that? And so right, she called out. Where was this? And we go. There was he was one of the servants, right? Perk Daled. Vamarav Hazak is Daniel. So that was referring to Daniel. He was one of the servants. What do you mean? So he and why was it called Hazak? That he was cut down from his greatness. That's why he became a servant. So therefore, it makes sense. And Daniel was punished, and therefore became a servant. Rather, that it meant the Hazak because anything that the king did basically had to be stamped or approved by him. So Daniel did not fall from greatness. So I wouldn't say that. So my answer is no. They should do the guva or visa. Aryavasa, right? So he was thrown into the lion's den. So by throwing the lions, then that was his punishment for giving Nebuchadnezzar Eitzah. Fine. So that was the case of building the walls that we got onto, referring to construction of shuls and temples. Now, Hakol Kamin Hagabadina. So back in the Mishnah, back in Baba Basra Mishnah mode, so we talked about you go ahead and build a fence back between the 2 yards. And whatever is the required amount, whatever the normal standard is, whether it's a one that's 3 tvachim wide up to 6, that was the case of the Mishnah, all built with stone and brick. So Akol Asuye Mai. So Asuye Asher the Nagi Hutzah V'Dafna. Even if the minimum custom was something with Hutzah V'Dafna, that was like you have branches that are posted into the ground, and you got palm leaves as sort of like the face of the fence, very thin. It's not made out of stone. Nevertheless, these are to be these are considered to be that's considered to be a fence. And therefore, if it falls down, then both the stones and the space belong to both of them are divided evenly. So the verse is pshita. So it says, okay, so what's the chiddush? So you only need in the case of the nafal shus of the chamirai. Let's say it all fell on one side. Inami or maybe one of the guys already cleared it. Mountain wojus, and you have ida. Maybe you'd say that since it's one guy, it's in his property now. The other, he is basically the machzik, and the other guy has to go ahead and prove it that he owns half, and he has to go ahead and bring proof in order to be. So the case of Masich Kamash Malon, that there is, you can't become muchzak just because the stones are in your property, right? You're 50-50 unless proven otherwise. Then we said, V'chein begina, so to a garden. So to a garden, if it was a place, the custom was to go ahead and fence up around your gardens, then we obligate him to go ahead and put up a fence. So the Gemara says, "Ha gufa kasha." This itself is a kasha. Amar says, "V'chein begina." It says so to a garden. Mashma hostam with a stam gina, a regular garden that you're growing your tomatoes in. So you're not obligated to go ahead and a regular garden. You're not going ahead to put a fence. Same as Seifa. Then it says the Seifa of a Bika, right? A Bika is like a field, like an open field, right? There's not much that's done there. So since there's not much done in the field, so you would think, right, that what would you think to be more protective of the fence? A garden or an open field, right? You think a garden, right? The open field is not really being used. About Bika, Magam Shanago Shalolidor, so it says but a Bika in a place where the minhag is not to go ahead and fence it, then we don't obligate them. If there is no minhag not to fence it, sounds like the regular is no minhag. Sounds like you fence it. So then we do obligate him to go ahead and build it. So hashta stam gina marta lo. We said stam gina, you don't. So stam bika mebai. You got to tell me that it was bika. You would go ahead and fence. You certainly shouldn't be a fence. That summer by halchikar. This is our Mishnah means. Ubein v'chein stam gina. So to a stam gina uvumakom shenagu ligdor bebika mechayvin. So to a stam being a regular gina, which you should fence, or a place where the minhag was to go ahead and fence in a field, then mechayvin oiso. So Ravim Kain, my aval. What's the lashon aval? So Rabba says no. Hachitani. This should be the expression v'chein stam gina. So to a regular garden that you grow your vegetables in is kamakum shenago ligdor dami is a regular garden is like a place where the minhag is to fence. So therefore you're going to obligate to go ahead the neighbor to go ahead and put the fence with you. About stambika, the regular field is kamakum shenago dami is a place where it's like a minhag where they do not fence it. The ain mechayvin, so we do not go ahead and obligate him. Fine, 2 dots. Around 6 lines from the bottom. Ella imrotza kaines lesech shalo ubayda v'oisa chasus. So your neighbor, let's say you can't. It's a minhag. Let's say where they don't go ahead and build a fence. You want to go ahead and build a fence, right? So you say, you know what? I'll go ahead and build a fence at my expense at my yard. So how do you prevent that when it falls down from your neighbor to say, okay, this fence was the two of ours, and therefore we split it 50-50, and the land underneath is 50-50. So you go ahead and you put on your side, and you put up a chazis. So my chazis. So you put up this sign. What type of sign is this? Amar Rav Huna, achvele lekarne lebar. You go ahead and basically you protrude so the top turns towards the neighbor's yard, and that shows that belongs to him. So it's constructed into the fence. It's exactly right. This sheet that was supposed to be Damri or according to Rabbi Yochanan, he says different. You paint it and you put plaster on it, but over here you build it where the stones like curve over outside.
What? I don't understand.
If a person has the top of the wall, when you build the wall, when it's constructed, so if you curve it outside, that shows that the fence belongs to the guy inside, and you curve it outside.
Mm-hmm.
That was how they did it. So whoever has a curve on the outside knows that the person that built the fence was on the inside.
They put some kind of a stone that looks curved.
Right, they put it on the corner, right, the corner towards the outside, whoever that was constructed. The Gemara says, I've never limited the gaff. Why don't you just do it on the inside? Why do you do it on the outside? The Gemara says, so what's going to happen if you do it on the inside? So therefore, you're not going to see on the other side. And what's going to happen on the other side of the fence, which you can't see, right? The other guy's going to put it on his inside. He's going to say it's both of ours. So therefore, if my neighbor wants to go ahead and claim this fence, he has to put a part on his outside, which is my inside. I will see it. The day he puts it up, I knock on his door and say, what's going on here? I built this fence. You and I both know it. What are you putting on my fence? Right? So Gemara says, guys, maybe his friend will go ahead and cut off that part on the outside. So Gemara answers, no, you'll be able to go ahead and tell that he cut it off. So Gemara says, a different version. You bend it towards your inside. So Gemara says, why don't you go center the outside? So Gemara answers, if I send the outside, guy is like my friend, the neighbor will cut it down. And therefore it will not be there. It'll say, it will be both of ours. Maybe the friend will add on to the part on his inside, which I can't see, and he'll claim so answers adding it on afterwards, not constructed, adding it on will be able to be noticed, and therefore it'll be clearly that it was built with yours on the inside and not his on the other side. So Gemara says, the Mishnah says you go ahead and you put a chazitz on bechutz. So kasha, and Ekanami, it's a kasha. And some of another case, turn
Turn the page.
the page.
Okay.
The Natfio, the Shai Ba'amsa. Why don't you go ahead, Milabar? Why? So they go ahead and they put like a plaster, on the outside of the wall. They put on the outside of the wall. That signifies that the person on the other side owns the fence. Why don't you go plaster on the inside? So our answer is because then your neighbor will put on his inside, which is your outside. Well, they put on the outside, maybe we'll go ahead and peel it off. It says both bars. So our answer is no. Right? People will be able to recognize that there was once plastered or painted, and he went ahead and took it off. So hutza, what about, right? We discussed these are all stone fences are constructed. What about the hutza fence? What about the as we said, like the sort of like the wicker, with the palm leaves? What about that? So Amar Rav Nachman, sinifua yarche milabar. So you go over here and then you put you attach palm leaves on the outside. Right, like a sort of like decorational part, like going on the outside, and therefore that signifies that's yours. I'm not even milagab. I'm on the inside. So my answer is well, if that's the case, then if you do it on your inside, only where you can see it. So maybe your neighbor will do it only in his inside, only he can see it. Who says both of Guy is a shadile. Maybe he'll cut it off. He'll cut off whatever palms you put on the outside. He'll claim it's both yours. So where it says you go ahead and you put some mud on there to prevent it from simply cutting it off. So it says we'll go ahead and peel off that mud. So my answer is to be able to go ahead and peel it off. And Abai says you're talking about a hutza fence, right? Hutza dafna fence. Hutza lesle takanasa. There is no way to construct something on the fence, right? Because it's not such a strong structure on a hutza fence. Ella Bishtara. You want to go ahead and make sure he doesn't take any of the materials or the land that's on, put it in a shtar. No other way to construct a hutza fence with proof.
Eat a plaster.
Right. Now, we're going to come back to Sabai in a moment. So
you could say the same thing with regard to a stone fence that you put it in this.
No, definitely you can put it in the shtar. Right. The question is, can you also do it in ways of construction, which we said before there was a way to do it, right? But we're saying by Hutza, says Abaye, there is no way to go ahead and do it. You got to put it in a shtar.
Okay.
But then we said, the Mishnah said a very strange thing in the end. If it was done by both of them, then they each put up a sign. This is to know it's both of them. So I understand. So how about this? Instead of each of them putting up a sign, how about neither put up a sign, and therefore it's fine. No, one of them went up and made up his own chazis. So you got to go put up your chazis. Right? I understand. So, right, and therefore, because if you don't go ahead and do it, then the other guy's gonna say it is. So the Gemara says, "I understand." So our mission is giving halacha for someone who's trying to, like, for people who are deceitful. The guy put up a thing that says, "This is mine," right? So so the mission is telling you, so go ahead and put up and say, also this is mine, in order to split it 50-50. But why are we going ahead and giving a takana, a case for a person who's tricking? Similarly, Bereisha lav takanasa, right? Is the Reisha not a case of a takanasa, the Ramayu, right? So, in other words, in the case of the Reisha, or the case before, we said, if you put up all yourself, put up a sign in order that he doesn't go ahead and take it. So it's also putting something up. So Amalei Pish Reisha Tana Dina. Our Mishnah says it has a din. And if you build a fence, it's all yours. And therefore, because the din that the fence is all yours because you build it, therefore it's a takana in order for it to prevent someone being deceitful by putting up a sign. But the seifa din the din, the tani takanasa, right? It doesn't say the din that neither one of them have to put up a sign and therefore belongs to both of them. It says both of them put up a sign. They're ready takanasa. So we're talking about a case of where it was the hutza skinan. La fuki made Abaye to exclude Abaye. Remember, we just said Abaye said right, Dalmar Hutza, let's say Takanasa, El Bishtara. Abai said the only way to go ahead and to prevent the Hutza fence from being taken by one of them is to put in a star. Says our Mishnah, no, if both sides put a bechazis, that also works by Hutza, Kamash Milan, the bechazis sagya, that the chazis is sufficient in the case of Hutza, not like Abai. Fine.
Wait,
Next Mishnah.
is the
Right, the palm thing. So therefore, then we're
what's
talking about the palm.
bechazis?
Which one? Where?
The bechazis.
Chazis means the sign. That means the sign.
Oh, that's the
Right. In other words, the sign is good enough on a Hutza fence. Fine. So therefore, our mission is not like a bayit, right? So the Kashlan that you don't need a star, that you can even put up signs on on your truling fence or whatever it is, and it'll be okay. So now in Mishnah. Mishnah says Hamakif es chavera b'shleish v'choisa. All right. So one who goes ahead. And actually, I was at a table yesterday. It was very simple, but I guess those are an art scroll, right? You see the picture there. It's not over here. So let's say, all right, imagine you have right tic-tac-toe board, right? Tic-tac-toe board, and you got one in the middle, right? And you have four on each side. All right. So one guy owns in the middle. There's somebody on all four sides. Okay. Now. So says the Mishnah. So one guy owns in the middle, and somebody owns the other sides. Now, Hamaki is from three of the sides. The God is the Rishona, as a Shnia, as a Shlishis. The guy on the other side puts a fence around this one, puts a fence around this one, puts a fence around this one. Okay, so it turns out the guy in the middle right now has three fences around his field. Right, he's almost fully protected.
Didn't we discuss this before?
7.5 years ago.
No.
I mean,
Recently.
In Bamatzia?
We're talking about walking through the land.
Right. So now, anyways, we're talking about right. Let's say his Mishnah was quoted. It was it was Baba Kama. It was right in the beginning. Baba Kama. No, Daf Chaf and Baba Kama. That's where it's brought down. Anyway, so they go to the Rishon as the Shliv as the Shlishis. So now, Ein Machayim and Osaf. That's the Tanakh.
Rabbis.
Oh, that marriage here. So we do not obligate the guy to go ahead, the guy who just benefited in the middle, to go ahead and pay for it. He doesn't have to go ahead and pay for those three fences. The other guy wants to do the fence, it's on him. If now the fourth side, we'll say the south, from my picture, whatever, he went ahead and put in a fence around that yard, which now also becomes the fourth and final fence for the guy in the middle. Now we make him pay for esakol. Right? We have to figure out what esakol means, and we have to see who's the one making the fence. So that's the mission. So the Tanakh says, let's just understand real quick. Tanakh says 3 sides done by one person. The guy in the middle doesn't have to pay. The fourth side is done. The guy has to pay Megal Gulam esakol. Rabbi said the fourth guy has to pay us a call. We'll see what that means. Fine. Zok the Gemara.
Wouldn't they share the expense?
Well, that's what it means.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, that's one side. So Amar Rav Yudah Shmuel Halok Rabbi Yosi the Amar Im Amad v'Goder Service Megal Gulam esakol. Right. The halakha is like Rabbi Yosi that says we make him pay esakol and loishna aman nikav loishna and makif. Now says the Mechudesh, right? Which when I first did this, I didn't understand this way. Even if the guy in the bottom, it's the guy with all the exterior fields, he built the fourth fence, he obligates the guy in the middle to pay for it. So the guy in the middle never said, I want a fence. And he never said that this benefited me. So even if the other guy put up the fence, he has to go ahead and pay us a kol. We'll soon see as a kol means. Or let's say the guy in the middle did it. And what's the svara is? The guy in the middle did it. If I built a fourth fence, why did I put up one fence? Right? I need four sides. Right? Why did I put up one side? Obviously, I'm using the 3 other sides that were done for me. So by the fact that I'm putting up the fourth one shows that I gave my stamp of approval for 1, 2, and 3. So therefore, Megal Gulam esakol. So that's Rabbi Yosi. That's one opinion of Rabbi Yosi.
He's benefiting also.
Because he's benefiting also, and he showed us. So whether he showed that he benefited by making that fence, or he simply didn't do anything, but there's a benefit to it, Megal Gulam esakol. So Itmar Rav Huna Amar, what does it mean hakol? Lafi ma shegodar. Now he splits whatever was spent. So the guy spent $1,000 So therefore, you got to pay him $500. And Chia Barav Omar Hakol, what does Hakol mean? Lafid Dmei Kanin Bazul. Paying the cheap amount. You could have put up, he wanted to put up a nice stone fence. You could have put up a cheap plywood fence for $100. So therefore, you got to pay him $50. Even though he spent $1,000, you pay him 50 because you only pay him the minimal of, hey, what does the fence benefit me? It benefits me protection. How much could I have protected it for? We could have done the fence for $100, so I'm giving you 50. I'm not giving you what you paid. You want a designer fence with stone and fancy, blah, blah, blah. I'm not getting involved with that. So tonight, Hamakif, let's look at Mishnah. Hamakif is went that in Mechayvin so. He went that and fenced the three sides. We don't obligate him. Oh, Ravis. Mashma, the guy from day one did all four. Mechayvin so. The Tanakama would agree that he has to pay for if he did all four, he would have to pay. You have to split the payments. And Amos say, what does it say? Say Rabbi Yossi Aimer, Imam That's Ravis. He does the fourth one. He has to do the two of them. So what's the machlekes over here between the Tanakama and Rabbi Yossi? It seems that both of them would agree that if the outside person did all four sides, the middle guy would have to go ahead and pay for his benefit. So I understand it makes sense according to Rav Huna, who says when he touches the word esakol means lefimash gadar. Means the actual expenses in the case we said was $500 he would pay, right? I know Dika bein Tanakama Rabbi Yossi. That's not going to be Tanakama Rabbi Yossi. The Tanakama saver hakol if you kanim bazul. According to Tanakama, when you go ahead and you pay, you only pay the minimum, which would be half of 100, which is 50. And and mashagadar low, but you not have to go ahead and pay on the actual real expensive, fancy expenses. Rabbi Yossi said, no, hakol fi mashagadar, right? No, whatever you paid, you paid. According to Rav Damar Hakol, when he says the word Hakol, according to Rabbi Yossi means lafi demei kanim bezul, that you pay the minimum amount. So ma'ika bein Tanakama Rabbi Yossi, right? Rabbi Yossi's answer to Tanakama, if Rabbi Yossi is saying you pay the minimum expenses for a fence, Rabbi Yossi can't say anything cheaper because that's the minimum amount. So what's the machlokes between Tanakama and Rabbi Yossi? So when it says so Rabbi Yossi eat to make kanim bezul like the if he's not giving the minimum, so what's he giving less than that? So I said, no. Right? No, you know what's cheaper than putting up $100 fence is paying a guy during the growing season $30 to just sit there and watch the field. So actually a watchman is cheaper. So the guy in the middle could claim, I need a fence. I was going to spend $30 on a guy to watch my watch my crops. So therefore, I'm not paying. So according to the right. So therefore, that could be the difference. Tanakama saver agar not sure eat to make kanim bezul low. According to Tanakama, you save me $30. Therefore, I give you $30 for a watchman, but I don't give you for the cheapest fence. But Rabbi Yossi saver to make kanim bezul, and Rabbi Yossi says no. You go ahead and give him the for the cheapest fence. Or if boy same, or you could say. Maybe you can say the first three fences not kamina. Tanakama saver revis with the ayvle. Makes like this. The first three sides, according to Tanakama, I don't go ahead and pay for. When you build the fourth side, so that side I benefited from, I'll pay for only the fourth wall. But Rabbi Yossi saver, you also go ahead and pay them. And means you pay also not only for the fourth, but you also pay for fences 1, 2, and 3. Or you can say this. Maybe it makes a difference of who puts up the fourth fence. The Tanakama is Saver Tama Dam and Nikaf Megal Glam. According to the Tanakama, he holds only if the guy in the middle went ahead and built the fence, then he has to go ahead and pay for all of it. I'm makif, but if the guy put the outside guy put up the fence, and nice say lo ella demei revi, so only pays for the fourth one. Rabbi Yossi Saver Loishna Nikaf. Either one or Bazani Imamad Vigader Megaglan of Esakol. He has to go ahead and pay for everything. And Lishna Achrina, some of different Lashon, Makif and Nikav. Maybe you can say like this. Who puts up the fence is the Nafkwina. Tanakama Saver, Im Gadar Makif. If the outside guy put it up, Esa Revi is the fourth one, Nami Yayiv Le. The Rabbi Yossi Saver, Im Aman Mikaf. No, if the middle guy does, if the Gadar Revis, who do Yayiv Le, who do Yayiv Le, the Gali died to the Nikolay. Maybe only according to this one, which is actually the opposite. This one says that Rabbi Yossi is actually more Meka one. That maybe Rabbi Yossi is saying that if the middle guy was the one who put it up, then he pays for it because he was Megala his das. He revealed that he would benefit from it. Aval im gadar makif, but if the outside guy go in and put it, lo he would not put up anything. So according to this, Rabbi Yossi is actually less. according to this, Rabbi Yossi is saying only if the middle guy puts it in, then he's megaladas. Otherwise, if the outside guy put up all four, then the middle guy can say, I didn't ask you to do it. Yes, I benefit from it, but I didn't tell you to do it. I want to pay for it, and therefore, all the expenses are on you.
This is all assuming that there's one owner for all the fields surrounding.
Yeah, we're going with that right now. Correct. Yes.
Yeah, because if the fourth, the side was owned by somebody else,
Right.
then the guy who put up the other three sides,
Right.
there's no title.
Say it again. If
the guy in the middle puts up a fourth
right,
fence, but
Yeah.
that field is owned by somebody other
right,
than the one who put up the other three fences.
right. So no, but over there, but then it's still the three sides. If he puts up the fourth one, then it shows that one guy benefited. But if there was three different owners, then no owner could have a claim because you didn't benefit me by yourself because I needed you're number three. But if number one didn't put up the fence, then your fence putting up is nothing to me. So your fence put up, I don't know anything for. I didn't benefit from it. It was only all of them together. How do you get all of them together? If it's owned by one person, that's why the mission is set up in such a manner. Yeah. All right. Now, next case. All right, this is today's daf a little bit shorter. All right, we got around 20 minutes. All right, so Runya, Akbe Ravina, Me'aber Ruchleisa. So Runya was surrounded, Ravina, right? Akbe, right. So it says, right. So it says Runya, Akbe Ravina, Me'aber Ruchleisa, right? So Runya was in the middle, and he was surrounded by Ravina. We'll soon see that Runya wasn't so wealthy, so he was surrounded by Ravina from four sides. So Amalei Havili Kama de Gadri. So Ravina put up a fence, and he said to Runya, "No, come on, let's go, pay me for my expenses." So he didn't give him. So okay, so don't put up $1,000, or $500 for half of the $1,000 of expensive things I did, but pay me minimum amount of fencing. Didn't give him. Havli Agarni Terusa, pay me for the watchman that you benefit from. Didn't pay for him. So one day he was harvesting from the palm trees in the middle. Runya was. So Ravina, nudged his sharecropper. He says, "Do me a favor. Zil shakel mine kibure dani azil." Right. So he said over there, "Do me a favor. When he's over there, go over there and take from him." Right. And Azil, so he went. Azil last week he went ahead. He brings some dates from Runya. So Ramalei Kaila. So Runya yelled at the guy, "Hey, thief! What do you do with my dates?" So Ravina was there when he saw his sharecropper go ahead and take the the dates as he told him to do.
Very slick.
So he said, "Galisa daika deminach nikolot." I see that you wanted your field protected from people like my sharecropper going in, and now this fence was very beneficial to you. So lo ella iza bialma. It should be like a goat, mila boini terusa, right? To prevent a goat from coming in, you need a fence. So too, you have benefited from my fence that I built. Now pay up. So Malay, but even for a goat, I can go ahead and yell at a goat. The goat will go away. So Malay, I've looked out the Mechilay. So Lamaisa, you need someone out there to go ahead and yell. So Lamaisa, you okay, so you need a yeller. But not right, but you need a yeller out there to yell at goats or someone taking from your crops. But Lamaisa, you went ahead and benefited from me. So also the Kamei, the Rava that came from a Rava. So Amarle, Rava answered, he says, Zil Paise b'mai diapis. Look, the guy said he's willing to take, the guy referring to Ravina, he was willing to take either half of what he spent, half the middle of the fence, or even for a watchman. Pay one of those things. Zeal, paise by the pais, below, if not, right? Danina Lacha, Dina, Karavuna, Libid Rabbi Yossi. I'm going to actually rule like Rabbi Yossi, who says that if you go ahead and put the fourth fence, that Megalagov is a kol. So you have to go ahead and pay for the expenditures on the entire fence. So either I'm going to rule against you for 500, or he's willing to take from you $30 for a watchman. Therefore, I would advise you to go ahead and and not fight with Ravina. Otherwise, I'm going to have to rule against you. So speaking of Runya and Ravina, yes, they were neighbors for a long time. Runya Zavin Ara Mitzvah de Ravina. So Runya happened to buy a small parcel of land next to one of the properties of Ravina. So Sav Ravina Lesluke Mishum Dina Rametzra. He wanted to go ahead and basically oust him as for Dina Rametzra. Right? He's adjacent, so therefore he really has first rights to the land. So Rav Safra braid the Rav Yabel Ravina. So says Rav Safra, the son of Rav Yabel Ravina, says Inchi Arba Letzala Arba Leslala. So the Lamaisa Runia, right? He pays, $4 or 4 zuz for hide, and he also pays 4 to the tanner, and he puts together shoes, and he sells shoes. He makes very little money. So since he makes very little money, he's a pauper. Be a nice guy and let Runia take this land. Don't necessarily, add to your multi-million-dollar portfolio. So maybe let him have it because he was a poor guy. So that was what the Rav Safra told Ravina, and I assume that he heeded to his advice. Fine. Now Mishnah. Says our Mishnah playing off the previous Mishnayos. When we were discussing in terms of the walls, right? That we talked this width, but the heights were Dalad Amos, 4 Amos, 5 to 6 feet, right? Basically to prevent what's it called? To prevent Hezekiah. So he says, so you're obligated when the fence fell down, we got to go ahead and rebuild it. So you rebuild it up to Dalad Amos. And if the fence is built, there's a chazaka that the neighbor paid for half, unless you be proof that he did not pay. From 4 amos and up, so we cannot go ahead and obligate the guy to build a fence taller than Dalad amos. And so let's say I went ahead, I'm neighbors with Mark, right? And so the minimum is 4 amos. I said, I'm only paying 12 amos. Mark builds a 10 amos high wall. And I say, it's a good idea if I can go ahead and I'll build a wall next to this fence, and then I'll basically put a structure there, and I'll have I'll have a covered area in my backyard. So Samech like Kaisa Acher, Alpha Bishul Naslav is a Tikra, Magalgan of a. But even though I didn't do anything yet, but since I put up a wall basically showing that I approve of this 10 amos wall because I'm going to go ahead and use it. Right. Now I have to go ahead and pay for half of the expenses of the addition between 4 to 10. Not only just the 1 to 4 or 0 to 4, which I originally had to pay for, and since when it was put up, I was not obligated to go ahead and pay. So it's a chazaka that I had to go ahead and pay for it until I prove that I did pay for it. So if there was an obligation initially for me to go ahead and pay, it's assumed I paid on time. If there was not an obligation, then it's assumed I did not unless I bring proof. That was the mission. So speaking of assumption of payment, let's get into that. Someone sets a time. All right, I lent someone money. I said August 1st, bring me the money. So I lent Avrami $100, and I say pay me back August 1st or July 1st, let's say, right? July 1st. And Avrami says, I approach him tomorrow. I says, I paid you 2 weeks ago. A person is not believed, according to Reish Lakish. He believed to pay early. A person pays on that. He doesn't pay early. But it says, right? It says Reish Lakish. He's not believed they paid early, and halabai that he pays on time. It's only when he pays on time, but not paying early. And Abai v'Rava Damim Tavai, they both say Avi Inish Depare because money. No, people actually do go ahead and pay within time. Because the Masremi Leis who say sometimes they get a few bucks, and I'm easy Pare, and they'll say I'm going to go ahead and pay early. Why? Can't right? You tell him in order that it doesn't sit on me that I owe money. People don't like to go to sleep with chayvus, so therefore I had the money, I paid in the money, so therefore I don't owe him anymore. I don't have to worry about when July 1st comes around if having the money or not. I already got done with that. So Tanan, let's take a look at our Mishnah. So Reish Lakish says a person is not believed to pay early, and the Abai and Rava says a person is believed to pay early. It is a believable statement, right? So let's look at our Mishnah. So Tanan, our Mishnah says, a person by the fence is a chazaka up until Dalad Amos that a person paid. So Mark and I were neighbors, and it's a chazaka that I paid. So if it said that I paid on time, she did because it's Shinasan. Ella I said no, I paid before time. Right? We see a person does pay early, right? Otherwise, the Mishnah wouldn't say that he already paid. He knows if the fence is already up, it's a pasha that he did it. It must be that even before the fence, I said I already paid the contract before the fence went up. So the Gemara says no. This is different because when the basically as the every row is put up to the height of Dalad Amos,
You're paying the contract.
they're paying the contract for every row. So therefore, the next row wouldn't have gone up unless there was payment. So therefore, that's the reason why the chazaka that the guy paid is different than the case of a regular loan, because it wouldn't have gone up otherwise. So touchback, listen, right? So the case of the seifa, right? We're assuming that when Mark went ahead and extended it from 4 amos to 10 amos, we're assuming I didn't pay unless I bring proof. So if it says I paid on time, am I low? Right? Elav, right? Damarle, prasicha money. I paid you before. So Alma law and she departed because money. So therefore, even when I say I paid it early, right? We see that I'm not, because people are believed to say they paid on time, right? There's a star saying that the money is due on this day. Then the money is due on this day. Then the person is believed to say he's paid on time. He's not. The shaila is whether a person is to believe to say he paid early. So when it comes to paying on time, so of course I would have paid. So what's the case of why is he not believed? There must be a case of where I said I paid it early. So Alma lo of it, and she departed because money. So we see that a person is not believed to say he paid it. So my answer is no. Shani hacha diamar miyemar demachayv rabbanim. In other words, over here is different because who says the rabbanim would have obligated me to go ahead and pay? Now, is this case where Mark built out, and all of a sudden I added? So then it's only if the rabbanim found me chayiv to go ahead and pay, would I have to go ahead and pay? So therefore, only that point. So a person is not going to go ahead and pay early unless the rabbanan are mechayiv for me to pay. Right? I wouldn't go ahead and pay early if I didn't have to go ahead and pay. So therefore, that's the reason of that mission. Because the only reason why I pay, Mark wanted to go ahead and build it, right? So if Mark is going to willing to pay for it himself, why should I go ahead and pay, right? So if the courts say I have to pay, then I'll pay. But meanwhile, I'm not going to go ahead and pay early. So therefore, that's the reason why a person not paid early. Now. And Rav Papa Rav Huna Berei Rav Yeshua Avdi Kabai Rav. They did like a buying Rav that a person is believed to go ahead and say early. And Ma Ravashi of a Karesh Lakish said like Karesh Lakish that no one is believed to say they paid early. The Hilchos like Karesh Lakish and the Hilchos like Karesh Lakish that a person is not believed to go ahead and say it early. Vafilu miyasme. And even if collecting from Yisayim, right, you go ahead and collect, and they're not believed. Afagav Damar Mar. So Abali Para Minichse Yisayim Lo Yipara El B'Shvua. When a person normally goes ahead and he collects from Yisayim, he has to go ahead and make a shvua. They didn't collect it. Chazaka lo avi inshi depare because money. If it was early, in other words, like this, the loan said the guy had to pay January 1st, okay, and the guy died in December. Now, normally when you collect from Yisayim, you got to make a shvua. I didn't collect in this loan, and then you collect the loan. But over here, right, the loan isn't due yet. So therefore, they don't even have to go ahead and make a shvua because it's not assumed that the guy collected the loan because the loan was due January 1st and the guy died before the loan was due. So therefore, even in that case, the lender does not go ahead have to go ahead and make a shvua. Now let's just go ahead and see the kasha, and it looks like there's a little arichas on this kasha. So let's just see the kasha introduction for tomorrow. Something for you guys to think about all day today, and discuss with your families and look into. So tavu liachar zman. So a guy claims. So let's say I lent Avrami money on, and then I say, okay, it's due on January 1st. It's due on January 1st, and I claim to him le'achar zman. So I come after the time. I come on January 15th, and I say v'amarloi, and then I says Avrami never paid me, and Avrami says v'amarlo parasicha b'zeh zmani. Not only did I not pay you on January 1st, I paid you December 15th, right? I paid you early. Remember, I'm coming on January 15th by the loan that was due January 1st. He said, Avrami never paid me. So Avrami said, I paid you December 15th. Now, we just said earlier, a person is not believed to say he paid early. All right? But what could have Avrami just said to be believed?
Ego. He could have said,
I paid you January 1st.
Right.
But he said, I paid you early. I paid you December 15th. Now, what do we say? Do we say b'makom chazaka? I mean, and even in the place of a chazaka, right? Right? There's a chazaka that. So he says. So he could have said I paid on his mind. So therefore, when he says I paid early, right? There's a chazaka person pay early. Nevertheless, we believe him because he's mali shaker, right? Why would I lie? I could have said that. I could have said that, or. I do but Malcolm Chazaka, right? Yeah, nevertheless, says a muksak that a person doesn't go ahead and pay early. Therefore, we don't have to make it. Now that the Chazaka is so strong that people never pay early, and therefore you got to go ahead and bring proof that you paid early. Otherwise, you're not believed to say you paid early, and therefore you have to go ahead and now pay the loan now. All right, so the one we'll get into it, and we'll stop right here. Go ahead, everybody.